All right, welcome everyone. Let's get started, just to be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you for being here. So just wanted to say thank you for being here, taking the time to be here, this evening with us. Before we get started, we have a translator on the call. So if you do need translation, you can press the interpretation button. Si ocupan traducción, está disponible la traducción en español. So I'm Hayani Silva. I'm the district social worker with Burton. I just wanted to say thank you once again for being here, and also for all your input on our parent survey. We got a lot of great feedback, and we truly appreciate all your feedback and all of your questions. We've been working very hard to address them. So this webinar, we have our presenters who will be leading the presentation, and anytime if you have any questions, please drop them on our Q&A box, and at the end we will have time to answer any questions and go over those questions that you have. So I'll pass it on so we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayani. I'm David Scheimer, the Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services, and I'm happy to be able to present tonight on curriculum and testing. I know that was a topic that is pretty wide-ranging, so it was a bit difficult to narrow it down a little bit, but we are going to narrow some of our topics down a little through a few different presentations coming from some of our, a couple of our directors and coordinators as well. And those people are, Mrs. Heather Rodriguez is going to be talking a little bit in a moment about a social emotional curriculum that we have and that I think is important during this time. Because as you know, when we're online and less of those connections in the classroom, it's really has been a very important piece of both the current time and also our strategic plan moving forward as a district. So we have some very, very specific efforts we're making in the social emotional side to have an impact on the whole child. And then we'll be hearing from Mr. Darren Faust, who is our curriculum coordinator, kind of in charge of the, he's really in charge of the overall implementation when we bring out new curriculum and bring it into place. So I know science happened recently, last year, and then we'll be jumping into, he'll be talking more on the history curriculum that was just purchased. And part of that is really important to mention that we know how important the digital version of digital version is right now in the online or the distance learning that's happening. We really need to have digital pieces involved with all of our curriculum, and that's one of that we'll have a bonus on that Darren will be talking about in a moment with our history curriculum that's brand new. We have Dr. Alexander Tijan, who will be talking about some of the testing. I know that's a big topic right now. You've probably seen it in the news for testing and testing assessment and how that will proceed with the state testing and the CASP, along with Darren Faust, who will talk about that as well. And Mrs. Brianna Kehoe will be talking on the topic of early literacy. So that has been a very big push too, because we know in this distance learning and in general, early literacy is key as we move into our students coming into third grade, wanting them to be at reading level and finding every way possible to get them there. So I believe it's going over to Mr. Faust.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be able to share with you about some of our curriculum adoptions and purchases in the last year. And like Mr. Scheimer just mentioned, we did adopt a new history curriculum, and we actually made a purchase that impacted our kindergarten through 12th grade students. So all students in the district were impacted by this purchase, and all teachers were. So for kindergarten through 5th grade, we adopted the Impact California Social Studies curriculum by McGraw-Hill. It's a state-adopted, state-approved curriculum, and we had a team of teachers involved in that process of making that selection. And then in 6th through 12th grade, we adopted the History Alive curriculum by TCI, or the Teachers Curriculum Institute. And again, we had a team of teachers involved in that process as well, in making that decision. And we were able to make that purchase in a relatively a quick timeline, in order to get it into our teachers' hands. As Mr. Scheimer mentioned, having an online component was very important, especially this last year where we had lots of students learning from home. And so as we transition to students coming back, this curriculum will still meet our needs, as it aligns with the new framework for history instruction, and again has a lot of those digital components that are going to support our students no matter where they are learning. So we were really excited to make that purchase. Go ahead and jump over to the next slide. There you go. We also have a few other additions that were made that didn't impact the entire district like the history curriculum did. We have English language arts adoption at the high school, and that curriculum again has some digital components that are good for supporting our students regardless of where they're learning. But it also this curriculum aligns with the ELA curriculum that we have for kindergarten through 8th grade. And so it has, it aligns with that. So that was a good purchase for our high school English students. The high school science just finalized a decision, and we're moving forward with the purchasing of the science dimensions curriculum by Houghton Mifflin. And that will be going to our school board on Monday. And so we're excited to be able to move forward with supporting our science instruction at the high school level. And the high school science teachers worked for a couple years looking through some different options, and before making the decision to go with the Houghton Mifflin curriculum that we are going with. And again, has those great digital components that will support our students. And then finally, we purchased an additional supplemental curriculum for math for grades 6 through 8 with illustrative mathematics. The teachers have access to that. Again, online components, which are great, but it also aligns with some of the instructional shifts that we are embracing in our district. And so we were excited to be able to purchase that curriculum to support math instruction in the middle school grades. So those are just some of the recent curriculum moves that the district has made. And I'll come back in just a little bit, as we talk about some assessment stuff if needed, but we're going to move on. Thank you.
All right, so in terms of early literacy, we're working to continuously improve our practices and ensure those practices are in alignment with the science of reading, meaning what brain science is telling us, what evidence-based classroom practices have indicated are the most effective ways in which to teach students how to read. So this graphic here shows the simple view of reading, which is kind of a graphic or equation that was produced that shows these two broad categories that are decoding on one side and language comprehension on the other. And they are multiplying by each other in order to have the outcome of reading comprehension. So if either one of those is low, then reading comprehension would be low. But if both of them are high, then reading comprehension is high. So this is kind of the simple view, as I've said, and a lot goes into this because, of course, teaching and learning to read are not simple. Each of these categories involves a lot of things. But this is where we're going to be focusing our efforts in terms of curriculum instruction and assessment. So decoding, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Decoding breaks down into these three main components of phonics, fluency, and phonemic awareness. So fluency is kind of that bridge to all those other areas of literacy that I just touched on. And we're honing in on aligning our assessment practices at the most foundational level and our instructional practices, starting with phonemic awareness, which is the most foundational piece, and phonics. So phonemic awareness means phonemic awareness is the greatest indicator of future learning success. It's also the most foundational skill because it is the ability to understand and manipulate the sounds in words. So it doesn't even involve print yet and reading letters or words. It's just understanding the sounds of the language. So as a district, we've adopted the Hegerty Phonemic Awareness curriculum to support our core ELA curriculum. The Hegerty Phonemic Awareness curriculum is utilized in our ETK, so early transitional kindergarten classrooms through second grade, to ensure that students are able to master skills such as rhyming and blending sounds together, segmenting words apart into their sounds so that eventually they can work on those reading and spelling and writing skills. So phonemic awareness is all about manipulating the sounds within words. And then on the other half of this slide, we have phonics and fluency. And again, many of our change ideas in terms of early literacy have focused on phonics and fluency so that we can have this systematic instruction to support students and their growth over K2. We're working with Nancy Fetzer, who's a nationally recognized curriculum expert and professional development trainer, to help us streamline those foundational skill assessment pieces and instructional pieces from kindergarten through second grade and beyond, because we know that they're struggling readers beyond second grade. And it's so important in those grade levels where they're reading to learn that they know how to read. So we're following Nancy's advice, and we've piloted Wonder's decodable books and routines so that we can continue to improve the process of embedding those fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension practices along with a systematic approach to phonics, so understanding the printed language itself. In addition to our work with Nancy Fetzer, we've also implemented a new one-on-one assessment system for these lower grade levels to support reading diagnostic skills. The platform is called Mr. Elmer. So if you hear that term, Mr. Elmer, it's an assessment platform, not a person. And we also have a team of TOSAs, or teachers on special assignment, who have been able to provide reading support to students who are in need of additional repetitions and on into further targeted interventions. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the second half of that simple view of reading graphic that I showed at the beginning is another very broad category of language comprehension. And language comprehension and decoding, again, they multiply off of one another for students in order to be able to read and have reading comprehension. So language comprehension involves having background knowledge about the subject, understanding the vocabulary and the structures or syntax of the language, having those reasoning skills, and lots more. So these pieces of literacy are developed over time and through various curriculums. Our core ELA curriculum supports us in that. It's ReadyGen. It also has an intervention piece called Ready Up that we've been able to utilize. We assess students in these areas through star reading and other various tools. And as well as our district focus on academic discourse, that really supports this work, because reading, writing, listening, and speaking all develop and improve in conjunction with one another. So while we're focusing on early literacy, all of those other district initiatives play into one another. So those curriculums that Darren was talking about, students are gaining reading skills in science, in history, in math, but it also all is founded upon the social emotional well-being of students, which I believe is the next piece of the presentation.
Hi, thank you, Brianna. You're absolutely correct. So one of the things that I am most proud about in working with Burton School District is the focus on the importance of social emotional learning and teaching our students these skills that they need to be successful throughout the rest of their lives. Because we can have all of these wonderful curriculums and we can have fabulous teachers, but if the students aren't able to regulate their own emotions or understand what's happening inside their minds and their bodies, they aren't going to be able to concentrate and focus in the class to be able to access the content that's being shared. And so the district has really taken a focus on social emotional learning. And we have really taken off with the second step curriculum. And so the purpose of using these social emotional learning lessons is just creating a basic understanding of emotions, what these emotions are, understanding how your body changes when you're feeling emotions, those feelings that you have, and recognizing when those things are starting to happen so that you can then learn to control them. We also want to teach coping strategies. If students are uncomfortable or they're sad or they're struggling, we want students to be able to pull these strategies from within themselves to be able to cope with whatever they're dealing with. And we really want students to be able to better navigate the world around them, because that's our goal. We want students who are able to move into the real world and be successful human beings. So how are we doing this? How are we rolling out these social emotional lessons? Like I mentioned before, second step is the majority of the curriculum that we're using. So each week, our school psychologist interns and practicum students record lessons from the second step curriculum, and we upload them to our district YouTube channel. And from there, we send them out to site administrators, TK through sixth grade, and those administrators share them with their teachers, who then assign them to the students. So that we felt was a more effective way to get the lessons to the students straight from their classroom teacher instead of coming from the district office. 7th through 8th grade, those second step lessons are being offered by the classroom teacher once per week. SCIA, I believe, is doing it twice per week, and Burton Middle School, we are still working on building this. However, at Burton Middle School, we will have a cohort starting next week using the CAST curriculum with our school psychologists. So students will be able to come in and access the CAST curriculum to really recognize, again, those middle school emotions and feelings that they are experiencing and how to cope with those things. And in our 9th through 12th grades at the high school, these are being delivered by a teacher, by their general education teacher, once per week. And these lessons are created by the school psychologist, our intern and practicum student at the high school, using Nearpod. So those are the ways that we are working on addressing the social emotional learning in a digital world. It's very different. Typically, we're in the classroom where we're pulling out groups. And so we've had to kind of shift our practices, but we are excited to continue to work on social emotional learning and stressing the importance of mental health and acknowledging these things and teaching students to understand that we're not all okay all the time, and that's okay. And we have to learn how to cope with these things and really support ourselves and know who to reach out to for support if we're not able to do that within ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, I believe I'm up. I'm Alex Teachin. I'm the Director of Technology for the district, but I also oversee assessment and specifically the end of year state testing assessment, the big one that we do every year. And I'm here with some updates on what is going to happen this year, because it is going to look different than it has in previous years, but it is not canceled. I'll get the big news out of the way first. It's not canceled. The state would like us to test this year. And so we'll talk a little bit about how it's going to look and how we're going to accomplish this. So first off, like I said, English, math, and the alternative assessment will be administered, though the format will be shortened. It's not going to be the same length of test as we've had in previous years, as your students may have taken. It's condensed. They say the English and math are about cut in half, whereas the alternative assessments, I've not seen specific guidance on length changes, but I have seen guidance that we will be administering this. Further, because of the state that we and the rest of the state of California are in, they've made adjustments to the testing system, the electronic testing system, so that we can administer this test both in person and remotely. It's going to take some work on the back end for us and for the teachers and principals and everybody who has a hand in this. But real briefly, either your kids will be in classroom taking it, and if not, if you've chosen to keep them at home and doing school remotely for the time being, they will be tested remotely. And so a camera will be on in the app. It will be, seeing the student to make sure we can monitor the process. You'll be able to text back or chat back and forth and text chat with the teacher if needed. And so that's the plan. Now, there are some things we also expect to happen, but have not yet been confirmed. And I say this because this is news as of this morning or perhaps last night. The State Board of Education was given the option to ask for a waiver for parts or the entire thing, and they're choosing not to have the entire state not test. They would still like all of California to test. But they've done two important things, and they're seeking approval for this at this point. We don't yet know that this is certain, but we expect it to happen. First off, there is a science exam that is taken in 5th, 8th, and 11th grades, I believe. And if I'm wrong about that, Darren, please correct me.
You're correct.
That is canceled. That science test the State Board of Education for California is asking for that test to be canceled. The other big change that we're pretty certain of at this point is that test results, are normally used to make some evaluative judgments about the schools and the districts. We've got to report them in specific ways, in specific places. And so what the State Board of Education is saying is that they're not making us do that this coming year. Rather, they'd like us to take the test so that we have results to share with you, with the families, so you have a sense of the progress the school has made in this year of COVID. And so that's another big change for testing this year. It's the way the test results are going to be used. Again, those two outcomes are still tentative. The state is asking for permission, and we're going to have to wait to hear back from the Federal Department of Education. These are not local decisions. We don't get to choose whether or not we test or not, or in the manner that we are allowed to test. The state dictates this to us, and so this is, unfortunately, I can't offer many options, but I can offer information. So I'm going to move on to our scheduling plans. Our testing window opens at April 26th and it closes June 4th, which is the last day of school. Typically, we don't like to test that first week. Simply, it's there in case unusual circumstances come up for sixth grade students, say they were going to SciCon or there was some other conflict that arose. We open it a little early. Typically, we start testing the first week of May, and we try to test the first 3 weeks of May. But we leave it open until the end of the school year, just in case, because we need to catch those kids who are absent or have, we had a student break a leg 2 years ago and was at home for 2 weeks recovering before they could come in and test. But we are required to administer these tests to all of our students unless they opt out. And so, we try to build in some space for ourselves to make sure that will happen. But you can anticipate tests happening in the first 3 weeks of May. We do leave these testing dates to be designated within that time frame to the site your student attends. And again, these are tests just for 3rd through 8th graders and 11th grade. So just one grade of the high school and then 3rd through 8th. So K2 will not be taking the state assessments. And finally, the big piece of news, which is, I think, a good decision on the state's part, is that 12th grade students who missed the science test last year have in past years been asked to test if they take the science test. But this year, even before they canceled the science test or they're provisionally canceling the science test, they opted out of that and said 12th grade students who missed any tests last year are not being asked to test this year. So that is the state of testing as it stands currently. Again, there's a question and answer feature. If you've got questions about state testing you'd like to pose, please use that and we'd be happy to answer them as we are able. Again, I'd like to reiterate, there is only so much that we can control in this process. And so we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure our kids are best served and we meet the requirements of the state. That is my presentation for now, but again, I'll happy to entertain any questions and I'd like to hand it back over to Hayani. Hayani?
Yes, thank you. So right now we are going to do the last 15 minutes just for questions and just to kind of answer those questions and address any concerns that you have relating to testing or curriculum. We have our experts here on the call. So we are open the floor for questions. If you're typing them on the question and answer, we'll be answering them that way. So how do we opt out of testing? So do you want to answer them live or do you want to just?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Okay. So opting out of testing is something you can do. It's a personal decision for you. And the way you do it is to just write a simple letter. You need to date it for this year and address it to your school site. The principal is usually who we like it addressed to. So dear Mrs. Torres or dear Mrs. Scheimer or just dear Mr. Stinson, and then list your student and what grade they're in and what class they're in, and say you would like to opt out of testing for the year. Make sure that you've both signed it and added the date that you write the letter, and delivering that to the school office is all we need.
Thank you, Alex. Any more questions? Any more questions related to assessment? So we talk any questions related to our second step, social emotional? We are here to answer any of your questions. Like I said, we really wanted to take the time that to address. This was one of the topics, well, two of the topics that parents were most interested on. So we really wanted to make sure that we are able to answer any of your questions. So as you continue, we have a few more minutes. Okay, there it is. Are there any adverse consequences to our students for opting out?
There are no adverse consequences for your students to opting out. There are adverse consequences for the school district in normal years. If we exceed 5% of parents opting out, then that becomes a problem for us. In normal years, that is done to make sure that we are being honest and we're not encouraging students to opt out to inflate our scores. So we would face an audit if that were to happen. But one of the other requests that the State Board of Education is making is to waive that 95% of the student body taking the test rule. And so, again, it does create a problem for the school district and for the schools, but it may be the case that that's going to be forgiven this year. We'll have to wait and make sure that the federal government signs off on that.
Okay, next we have a question from Gabby. My son is 5 and is in TK. He was born after the cutoff day for him to have been placed in kinder. How can he test if he can skip to first grade like other kinder kids? So go ahead, I'm sorry.
I do not know. I don't know the answer to that.
That would be an individual question that would really need to go through the office of that particular school site. So if there's questions regarding TK and how they move forward, it's going to be through a process that starts at the office and probably leads through site admin and the teacher. So it's really on a case-by-case individual basis.
Yeah, and I will also, I can drop off if you send me your school that child is attending, I can give you the office number if that's something you needed. Next we have, if we choose to opt out, is there a time frame we need to submit the letter by?
You need to submit the letter before they begin testing. And so doing it before that first week of May deadline is critical. Once the students begun testing, we can have them continue testing. You could opt out once we're in the middle of the process, but we can't clear scores once they've begun taking the tests. So your student will be opted out of part of the test, but they will still get scores for whatever they've completed. And very often that's doesn't feel great because it's a cumulative score that you get. And so then it looks like the scores that come out are very low because they didn't have the opportunity to take the entire test.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question we have. So the only thing the test results are going to be used for this year would be for the parents?
Yeah, again, it's not going to be used as an evaluative tool for the state or the federal levels. It's really going to be a tool for parents to help understand what progress we've made in this year, help the district understand the progress or where the gaps are in this year of COVID. I think that's really their intent, is they want to turn it into a tool that we can use to really examine our practices and shore up gaps in the coming year when hopefully everything looks more normal.
Yeah, and our next question kind of leads to that. Why are students still required to test if they have been on Zoom? So you kind of already answered that, just kind of a measure for us to see how we are doing our end and see what we need to work on.
There is that. It is also a federally required. It's a law that we have to test to receive funding. And our State Board of Education has decided that they are not going to pursue waiving the test. They do want us to take it. And so we are required to administer it.
Any more questions? Thank you for the questions. Very good questions. I appreciate all your questions. There's no right or wrong questions. We're here to answer them.
There was one question that was submitted on the chat about asking if they could have access to see the curriculum. So I would just encourage the parents to reach out to the teachers. The teachers have the curriculum available that their students are using. And so they should be able to show you samples of what they're using, or the libraries at the school sites have those as well. So you can always reach out to your child's teacher if you have questions about the curriculum that they are using.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any more questions? A few more minutes and see if you guys have any more questions. Okay, so parents would like more information on the CAS curriculum, on details on what is being taught for the social emotional curriculum. Is it approved by the state?
Okay, I can take that one. So CAST is recognized by the state. It's actually highly recommended by NASP, which is the National Association of School Psychologists. So CAST stands for Coping and Support Training, and it is a more intensive curriculum that's used for our middle to high school students. It's not used for younger students. It's more focused on middle and high school students who have kind of older, more mature issues that arise. And so that's what that curriculum is used for. If anyone would like to take a look at it or maybe have a conversation with our school psychologist who is implementing that curriculum, please let me know. And you can drop your information in the chat and I can have Ms. Taslim Abdullah, who's our school psychologist at Burton Middle School, reach out to you. She is a CAST trainer, a certified CAST trainer. And so she is the one who is utilizing that curriculum because she is the only one at this point of our school psychs who's actually certified to use that curriculum. So if you would like to hear more about it, drop your information in the chat and I can have her reach out to you specifically if you have individual questions about the curriculum.
I'm going to jump in here too. I apologize. I realize after hearing you go through that I also used the phrase CAST and I meant a different thing. I meant the science achievement test. And so just to be really clear, the state does not administer a test for social emotional curriculum. It's a science test. Apologies. The CAST, there's the question about what I hope is the CAST test, the science test. And if I'm wrong, please ask another question. We believe that the science test is not going to be administered this year. We believe that the state has, or we know that the state has asked for it to be canceled, and we're just waiting on word from the federal government as to whether or not they're going to approve that request.
Thank you. Any more questions? So a few more minutes. And this webinar will be available later on our burtonschools.org website for you to access it again. And if you have any future questions, you can always reach out to any of us here on the call. And we'll be more than happy to answer any specific questions you might have. Okay, any more questions? So wait a few more minutes and see if you guys want to type them in. And you can always ask a question anonymous if you like as well. Yes, we can get you information on the CAS testing and get your information. Right, any more questions? Parents wondering if the students of 4th grade is going to take the exam, state testing.
Yes, they would be taking the English and the math test, the modified, shortened English and math tests.
See, yes, they are going to. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I have a question about social emotional learning. Okay, yes, we can definitely give you a call as well if you have specific questions. So the SEL curriculum, second step is being distributed to all students, and we also do have more specialized services. So if you have specific questions about specific services that we provide at the school site, we also have that. And that presentation will also be available in schools. We had a presentation last month about the topic and the services that we provide at our school site. First grade for testing. I thought you said first grade is not testing, right?
There is no state testing for kindergarten through second grade. And so, yeah, they are not taking any state assessments. We're doing individual reading assessments that Mrs. Kehoe talked about just a little bit ago.
Yeah. All right. Any last minute questions? When can you expect? I can reach out to you tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you all of our presenters for taking the time to be here and to answer questions for our parents. Okay, last question. Which teacher would be showing them the social emotional curriculum in their homeroom? So the videos are being sent out, right, Heather? And students have to see them at home, right?
It would depend on the grade. So for TK through 6, yes, they are sent out, and I believe they are assigned as more of an asynchronous activity. For the middle school at SCIA, those are being presented by the homeroom teacher. And at the high school, I believe they're being rolled out by the ELA teachers, the English teachers.
Yes. So yeah, if you have elementary age children, really taking the time to watch those videos with them. They're being sent out. They're really interactive. They're really good videos. So, parents, just make sure you ask your kiddos about them and really ensure that they're watching and take advantage of that resource. This is an evidence-based curriculum. It's a really good source of information for the kids. Yes, Krista, I can do that. Okay, perfect. Any last minute questions? Thank you so much. I appreciate all your questions and all your feedback. Let's see. Okay. Perfect. Is this for all grades? Are you, okay, would you be able to type in on our question? Are you referring to the second step or? I think that's what you're referring to, right? If it's the second step, yes. If that's not what you're referring to, you can type it in and to make sure I understood your question. Oh yeah, the social emotional lessons. Yes, so they are being, so it's district wide, so it's being sent out to everyone. It's kind of like our tier 1 where everybody gets the curriculum. Okay. Yeah, so they're being sent out. Thank you. Any more questions? No. What are the parents' choice of holding their child back if they are K through second? They had more than half of their school year taken. We are unsure how much this has impacted them academically. If you like to drop your information on the chat, we can reach out to you and talk about it. As of right now, I don't know if you want to answer on that, Heather, but as of right now, we are kind of waiting.
It just really depends, like Mr. Scheimer mentioned earlier, it really is a case-by-case thing. So I would recommend, if you have questions about that, to reach out to your child's teacher and request an SST meeting and have the team come together and talk about how your child is doing and what the options are. It really is a case by case thing. So it's hard to make to answer across the board, just because it really does depend on each student.
Yeah, that one's a tough one because we know we have kids who are thriving on the environment and they're doing really well, and there's kids who are struggling, more. So it's just kind of, if you have specific concerns, and reaching out, and we can get that meeting set up and kind of come up with a plan that can support the needs of your child. More questions. Do a few more minutes of questions. Yeah, again, if you have specific concerns about your child, and we can always set up a meeting. We've been having a lot of those meetings where we have our teacher there, we have our vice principals, our principal, and we kind of just all come up with the team and we discuss what are your concerns, and come up with a game plan to support the child if the child's struggling. And then that's kind of how we go about those cases. All right. Right, we're gonna stick around. You're free to go if you have any more questions. You can stick around and ask them the questions. If not, you're free to go. Thank you for being here once again.